today's video we're going to be talking about the dress block and how to get your way around reading the pattern and of course applying what you just read onto fabric. That's the main order of business in this video. Alright, so let's look at the front panel over here. So this is my front pattern and it says front cut times 1 on fold, and then somewhere on that pattern is the fold line indicated, and in this case it's indicated on that side of the pattern, center front on fold. So when you place it on fabric, that line must be on fold, yeah. And of course the other side of that pattern is your side seam. As you can see, the shape of the hips over there, the waistline and the hip, yeah. So that's what that stuff means, right? And then we have a line over here, two lines heading towards the top. That is your dot. So you have a shoulder line dot on this pattern. All right, that is the front panel. Let's move on to the back. The back is a little bit different. There we have back, and then we have center back over here. So which means this line over here is my center back line. Then it says cut times 2 on fabric. All right, so what that means is when I have my fabric double, in my case I do have my fabric laying double. So when I trace around this right now and I cut it, and when I lift up the fabric, it will be 2 panels because I have my fabric laying double. But let's say I didn't have enough fabric and I want to still cut it times 2. I can go about tracing it 1, and then when I flip it mirror image and trace it again and cut it, I would have 2 pieces, and it would still mean cut times 2 on fabric. All right, and the same applies to the front again. Let's say you didn't have enough fabric and you want to still cut it on fold, but because you have a single piece of fabric, you can go about tracing it as well, like first like that, once around, and then flipping it on that line there over and tracing it again, and then cutting it, but without cutting the middle line through. Then when you lift up your fabric after you've cut it, you will have a piece of fabric cut on fold. That is only if you are trying to save fabric, people, and you don't have a lot of fabric. That is how to get around cutting it, still keeping it to the instructions on the pattern. Remember, this is very important, instructions, guys. We gotta follow it to the T, right? And that is how you're gonna get around cutting it on fold for the front, maneuvering the pattern around, and then cutting it times 2 on fabric for the back. And that simply means that the back has a zip somehow, or maybe some kind of fastening, and the front has a fold line with some dots. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and actually cut this block real quick. So here we have my fabric, and we're going to lay down the front first because it's on fold. And looking at my fabric over here, because I have a lot of fabric here, I'm going to make use of my fold line, which is on that side of the fabric. Here we have my fabric laying double, and on the other side of my fabric is a fold line. So I take my front, flip my front, because I can't lay it like that on fold, right? Even if I flip it around, I can't lay it like that on fold because my fold line is this side and that is my side seam, right? So which means I can flip my pattern that way. All right, touching the center front line on the fold line of the fabric. Let me just pull the piece of fabric closer. All right, so here we have my front and fold over there, and now we're going to move over to the back. So the back is cut times 2 on fabric, and I can actually lay my back next to my front panel to save up fabric. You don't want any unnecessary space in between, people, just to save fabric. I can either go tracing it like that, or I can flip it, putting the side seams together and trace it like that as well. So after I trace around the front, I can trace around the back, and let me bring it down a little bit so you can see it. My video camera is a bit weird. today, but there we go. So trace around the back, the front, and then trace around the back, and then we start cutting. All right, let me do that real quick, guys, and we can continue with the dress block. All right, everybody, we're back. So I went ahead and cut my front on fold. There we have the fold fabric times 1 on fold with the dot traced in. All right, and there we have the back cut times 2, 1, 2 pieces for the back. And then the only other thing I need to trace though is my nip. So this nip over here indicates that when I sew these pieces together, I need to sew the center back seam line from the bottom all the way till that point. So which means that somewhere along this point I will have a fastening, which of course will be a zip, right? So that is what that notch, that nip over there means. Cool. So there we have our pieces. I'm going to remove my pattern pieces, and now we're going to talk about the fabric. Alright, so after you copied your dot over to the front, please make sure that you do copy it on the other side as well, so that you can have it on both sides. So when I open my pattern fabric piece, I will have 2 dots indicated on the fabric, from the top of the shoulder line to the bust point. If you can see over here, guys, I have 3 lines, so 2 outer lines and then 1 middle line. So when I go to the ironing board, I can just iron it on that middle line. It makes it easier to divide the dot equally in half. That's why I have a third line, 1 line running in the middle there. All right, so our first order of business, everybody, is as follow. We're first going to close the dots, right? So looking at our dress block have 2 dots, and they are closed dots. I'm just going to fold it, finger press it, and then I'm going to sew the dots from the top all the way to the bottom. I complete both dots, and then we will talk about the next step. All right, let's go to the sewing machines right now. All right, everybody, so we're going to continue this real quick. And here we have the front, and what I'm going to do with the front is fold the dots in half right in the center line over there. You can finger press them, or you can go press them with your iron. Once you're done pressing it, we will first sew the dots real quick. Lift up your needle, lower it onto the first line over there. We're going to go back tack in the beginning there, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to sew all the way to the bust point over here. Get to the end, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Do a back tack. The same applies to the other dot. Fold your dot. Lower your needle, always lower your needle into the fabric. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right till the end. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Alright, there we go. So let's just cut away all these little threads and things. What we want to do at this point is ironing the dots either to the center front of the body or away from the body. Yeah. What we're going to do as a group, we're going to iron it away from the body, facing that way. So grab your iron, place it on the ironing board, and iron it down, and make sure you use a tailor's ham, because it's a dot. Whenever you are sewing a dot, you always want to iron the dot on a tailor's ham, that little cushion thing. Put it at the bottom and iron your dot over there. Alright, because sake of time and the video, let's suppose that I did iron it. So the next step that we got to do is sewing the shoulders of the back and the front. So there we go, right sides facing up. We grab one of the backs, then we're placing right side to right side, lining it up by the shoulder line. You can either stick a pin in there to keep it there, but what you want to do is lining up the neck shoulder line to the neck shoulder line of the front. Whatever you have left over here, you can see the pattern may be bigger. You can just trim away from the shoulder to the armhole of the back. Alright, so here we are placing it under the machine, and our seam allowance is 1 centimeter. Keep that in mind. Lower our needle, back tack 1 to 3, 1 to 3, and then we will sew at the end of the front shoulder line. 1 to 3, 1 to 3. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Alright everybody, apologies on that. I had some weird noise in the background and phone calls. We are continuing cutting the thread off on our shoulder line real quick. And the next thing we got to do is sewing the other shoulder line. So we're lining up the panels again. Back shoulder to front shoulder line. Making sure your darts are still facing towards the side seam, because when you're sewing, sometimes the foot of the machine pushes the dart towards the front. So make sure it's still flat. There we go. Lowering the foot, lowering the needle, and our seam allowance is 1 centimeter here. 1 to 3, 1 to 3. 1 to 3, 1 to 3. Lift the needle up. Alright, there we have it. And then what we got to do is we're just going to, because this is a sample, we're not going to overlock the seams, guys. But if you were doing an actual dress, you want to overlock the shoulder lines at this point. So overlock, overlock. But because we are doing a little sample, we're not going to overlock. Alright, so after that we're going to iron the seams flat, just so we can get rid of the bulk. Iron them flat, and then we gotta sew the center back. So while we are here, and you guys can see on the video, we're just going to grab the backs together, just like that. Center back, center back. And now that we have already made that notch there, that nip, we know exactly where to start the stitch and where to end the stitch. And this is also right side to right side of the back. So right side to right side, yeah. With calico is a little bit difficult to see what your right and wrong side is. Usually there isn't a right and wrong side on the calico, but you gotta make yourself a right and wrong side by marking the edges or marking the fabric, so that you know what is right and wrong. Keep in mind, now that we're going to sew the center back together, our seam allowance on the center back is 2 centimeters. So from this edge, measure inward 2 centimeters and make a dot. And my 2 centimeters is here on the plate here. There we go. Lowering the foot and the needle. And we just got to sew from that point all the way to where we made the notch, yeah? Back tack, 1 to 3, 1 to 3. All the way till the notch. 1 to 3, 1 to 3. There we go. Lift up your needle to the highest point. If you can hear that sound in the background, guys, that's my alarm. Apparently I was meant to wake up at this time. There we have our center back. All we gotta do is iron this open, iron it flat. And we're just going to finger press this real quick. Alright, so after this point, guys, we just got to turn the block and we're going to sew the side seams together from the armhole all along the curve line of the body of the dress to the hemline. Alright, so line up your edges real quick. And because we're doing a normal seam, it's 1 centimeter seam allowance. Here we go. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, meaning the back tacking all along the curve. And as I'm curving, I'm turning my hands as well in the same motion as I'm sewing. Yeah. So, and you can stop and go. You don't need to like sew continually and mess up your seam. What we got to do is sew, turn, stop, sew, turn, stop. For those that still fairly new to sewing machines, yeah. All along the curve line. Now I'm getting a different curve, so I'm going to now stop that curve and curve the other way, like that. I was curving left, and I'm going to curve right. Stop, sew, stop, sew. There we go. All the way to the bottom. Back tap 1 2 3 1 2 3. Cut off the threads. And the next thing we got to do is sew the other curve line, other side seam. Alright, lining up the side seam real quick under the arm. You could potentially make use of pins over here. There we go. Lifting up your foot, lowering your needle into the fabric, and keep in mind our seam allowances again: 1 centimeter, 1 2 3 1 2 3, back tacking, making sure your layers are lining up. Oftentimes the bottom layer disappears, so make sure you can see it, guys. Otherwise you end up with a long piece of fabric on one side and a short piece on the other side. So always double check. All along the curve line of the side seam, lining up the edges. Back tap 1 2 3 1 2 3. Alright people, there we go. We are now ready to go iron this entirely, and I'll show you guys how it looks at the end. We are basically done, everybody. Just go iron them real quick, and then I'll show you guys in the next. Alright everybody, so there we have our dress. We have our center front on fold with our 2 dots coming from the shoulder line all the way to the bust point. Shoulder line all the way to the bust point. When we flip it around, we have center back, 1 2 halves that makes the center of the back, and then in the middle of those 2 halves, from the neckline to past the waistline and hip line, we get a zip. So if you are going to attach a zip to your skirt, or to your dress rather, you want to attach it in that little gap over there. Alright everybody, and that's about it. Thanks for watching. This is Suno. I'll catch you guys in the next R&R with Suno.